Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of
Ghetto.
My name is Hans.
I'm Edward.
And we are your hosts for now and forevermore.
Or until one of us just finally, marries rich and goes live in a mansion somewhere deep in the forest.
It turns out that of the two of us, only I am now eligible for this scenario.
I might have married rich anyway.
For those of you who may not know, Edward is now newly betrothed. Congrats.
Thank
Love
you.
the ring, by the way. It's such a beautiful ceramic white ring. It's beautiful. Again, congratulations. This is also why we haven't had an episode in like the last 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
3 weeks. Anyway, so welcome back to what is now formerly Geddle 79. We do hope that you will enjoy, and we're going to get straight into it. So, Ed, the nuptials. They happened. You went away for a glorious honeymoon. And how does it feel?
Good.
Does it feel good?
I mean, I was reminded that it's my first vacation that I actually proper took in 8 years. So,
that is a very long time to not have had a proper holiday.
I know, right? Like I do take off working with Vamers. We get proper time off, and it's actually nice to work with the Vamers because it's super supportive. But in order to go away is something else.
Is something else, yeah.
And I must say, after about a week, you get a little bit bored.
Lies. Okay.
No, it's true though. Like, I'm so used to sitting here and looking at the screen and words all day.
And not necessarily working.
Well, still looking at words at the very least. And you kind of start missing that after a little while. But regardless of that, I do feel that I rested very well.
Okay, good.
I feel like I kind of the thing about taking a 2-week break is that you kind of it becomes a habit.
Look, you certainly look well rested. I told you this before already.
And I appreciate that. It makes me feel good because I have not been sleeping this past few days.
Well, look, on this topic, what I really wanted to know was not necessarily about your holiday, but what it is to have the feeling of being married now. You know, that married life, how your relationship has evolved from being with this wonderful woman that you've had in your life for some time, to taking the next step to being engaged, to then taking that step even further and committing to each other for a long life of happiness. That's what I would like to know. I know it's still early days and honeymoon period lasts for some time, but I'm just curious to know, like, how does it feel? Has it changed?
Let me put it this way. I am 30 now. I have been with the missus for 10 years before this.
Yeah.
An entire third of my life. Okay. So the wedding feels nothing more special than our relationship already is to me. I will say this much. It feels weird to carry this ring. My hand feels heavy because it's an extra weight and ceramic is heavy. But it's nice to finally call her my wife.
Heavy is the crown that carries the burden,
right? It feels good to be able to call her my wife and actually know that it means something now instead of just because.
Yeah.
But in the greater scheme of things, I personally don't feel much different because I feel like we already had.
I think
a very, very good thing going.
Yeah, it's just more solidified, I suppose. And I know that of the two of you, Marianne was definitely the one who was most looking forward to it because, in your mind, you just feel it's not. I don't want to use the word arbitrary because I don't believe weddings are arbitrary, right? But I think you just felt that it was just another event to get through because the two of you already have something so beautiful and special, but it meant so much to her, that I think for her it means it feels different, more so, I would imagine. Right?
I think for her especially, basically her life has changed now because she's super sentimental in one way, and in another way, she takes things like this. She puts them high up there.
Yes.
And I think this was for the better. So as they say, it's all downhill from here or something.
No, it's not. It's really only uphill. Now,
I believe as well.
Focusing on this aspect of your life at the moment, because this is what this episode is going to be about. It's, we're going to look at relationships in video games. Which ones are the most profound? Are there any that are even worth looking at? Is there a strange absence in video games in terms of relationships? This is what Edward and I today are going to discuss. Now, with marriage on the mind, Ed, obviously, because this is what we've been speaking about, and you're a newlywed, I'm curious about this one. Video game characters who are married. Who actually comes to mind?
From the tip of my tongue? Literally no one.
Right? No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I gave this a very, very good, I really thought about this for some time. Yeah. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that relationships from any extent, never mind just, they're mostly platonic, okay? It's very rare that there's a romanticized relationship within a video game, unless, of course, that video game is specifically focusing on that, such as the, Tell Me Why. No, not the...
that Don't Nod game.
Yes, Don't Nod games. But those are also fairly new, right? So we're talking about the last 5 years. These are games that have been focusing on certain relationships, whether it's familial or romantic in nature. All right.
Yeah.
And so I thought about this, and I was like, okay, well, let me go way, way back, because two of the characters that always pop up whenever I think about characters in general, all right, and let's assume relationships-wise, is Peach and Mario.
Yeah.
The thing is,
or Link and
Zelda. Are they even together today? Because it's been years of the princess is in another castle. And
she's always in another castle.
And she's always in another castle. And even today, we're now, 30, 40 years after the fact. As far as I can tell, Mario and Peach are still not together.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, they're not married. Meaning that, what do they actually have then? And, and I say this because it's different to the relationship between Mario and Luigi, for example, because that's familial. So familial relationships are quite present in video games. More often than not, you'll have a character and then that character will talk about their sibling or their aunt or uncle or something like that. But when do the characters speak about their love interests? And bear in mind now, I'm not talking about something like The Witcher, which has overarching, and you can romance men, woman, whatever you want, right? Or GTA or Assassin's Creed, But even so, those are more modern games, within the last 5 to 8 years. If you go back further, what is really there? Like Doom Guy. Does Doom Guy have a love interest? Just as an example, so. Right? It's not fulfilled. But then, or you could go back even further. Let's go to the original StarCraft, right? I remember Kerrigan had something for what's that guy? That burly. I've forgotten his name now, but he was also a main protagonist.
Main guy. Yeah. I want to say John, but I don't think it's John.
But it was only alluded to. And then in the second game, in StarCraft 2, they weren't really together, even though they were obviously pining for each other.
Yeah, in the second game, Kerrigan was already Zerg.
Yes.
And a lot of the story went around the fact that the main guy, I can't
recall his name right now.
The main guy was basically revenging and avenging their entire relationship, the reason why she became a Zerg. But they never got together again.
But even then, they were not, it wasn't formal. Now, I want to make it clear that it's not that I believe that every relationship, everybody needs to get married. If you want to live with your partner, that's fine. That's a choice that you're making, of course. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. what I'm trying to get at is the strange occlusion of marriage and serious relationships within video games. And it's quite an interesting perspective, because in today's day and age, the world is becoming far more accepting and open and for the better, right? And yet video games are still stunted in this area of growth. And I find it interesting because it's not that games completely steer away from them, right? But take Lara Croft, for example. Where is her love interest? There was one I remember alluded to. I think it was in Tomb Raider 2. It was some guy that comes around, and it's quite obvious they have a bit of a history, right? But there was never anything there, Like even in the newest 3 Tomb Raider games that have just come out from Square Enix, there's nothing there. Now, it's not that Lara Croft needs to have somebody in her life, for example, but it's just an interesting thing to note.
That's a weird thing. That the only character I can think of who is married to another character in the franchise is Johnny Cage. And I think it's Nikki Cage is married to in Mortal Kombat. I think it's Nikki Cage.
Okay.
Because Cassie Cage is the daughter.
Is it not Sonya? I thought it was Sonya.
Maybe it's Sonya.
Isn't it Sonya and Johnny?
Maybe.
Okay.
Could be.
Now that's
but
interesting.
That's the only one.
That's interesting because that means that Mortal Kombat is of all the franchises,
it represents marriage.
No, it's like it's pushing that forward. Look, it was just such a weird thing because when I thought about what we wanted to speak about for the next episode, and then obviously me wanting to incorporate your nuptials and your marriage, and I just thought to myself, what relationships are there in gaming? And a lot of the times when you think about it, it's a protagonist. And this protagonist, if you're lucky, will come across a love interest. It doesn't matter what the love interest might be, but there's never anything really solid. So a good example of this, in my opinion, and I know you'll agree with me on this one, is Mass Effect. Okay? You play as your Commander Shepard, whether it's male or female, it's irrelevant. And along the way, you can enter relationships with a variety of characters. And depending on how you play the game, you might have incredible relationships with them, or maybe you'll romance too many people and not have a good relationship, right?
Yep.
But even then, it never forms a true core part of the character.
No. And it's not really a part of the plot.
Yes. It's just sort of a side piece, which sounds bad in its own way. It does. And then, like I was really thinking about it, and I was going through a lot of, like Nathan Drake for me is probably the only other one where I've seen him actually eventually get married in I think it's the 4th game, right? In the 4th one.
I think it's the 3rd one, because the 4th one, he's already married.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're right. And that was a beautiful relationship because you actually watched it mature over 3 games. Yes. So perhaps maybe that's one of the best examples of a strong union of characters. But then again, at the same time, I mean, it's not that the other characters need to have significant roles in the game, but you don't really ever play. I think it's Sarah. I stand to be corrected on her name.
In Uncharted, yes.
Sarah. Yeah. So the only other one, and this is now again very recent, that actually comes to mind to me is The Last of Us 2. So The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2. Now, that relationship was very different. It was wonderful in a way because that was like a father-daughter relationship.
Yes.
And then in The Last of Us 2, we had a wonderful relationship between Dina and
Ellie.
And Ellie. I almost forgot her name. Can you believe it? And that was all really, I loved that. I love that aspect of being able to see these characters grow with these other people around them and how it either strengthened them or broke them down or allowed them to change or become better, And so again, with that in mind, Ed, and for those of you who are listening, who comes to mind for you when you think about relationships in video games? And what stands out for you?
The most immediate thing that's standing out is Mary Jane and Peter Parker. But that extends from the comics and from the movies.
See, I would say that's not that doesn't count. I'm talking more like the like if we look at all the gaming franchises, right? So like Doom Guy, Metroid, Pokemon. Okay, I suppose Pokemon would never really have a romantic relationship, but
which is so sad.
Look, they do focus on friends in Pokemon. Okay, I get that. But there's just, where are the relationships? That for me is the strange thing. And maybe I'm completely missing something that I have seen along the way, because of all of the hundreds and hundreds of games we have played, I feel there should be more, you know?
It's like...
actually, Bioshock.
But again, that's father-daughter.
Booker and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Oh, right. You're right. It's familial.
Spoiler alert.
It's always familial. It's never romantic.
Yeah, or when it is romantic,
is that?
it's usually the prince saves the princess. It's never proper progress with the relationship.
Yes.
That's so weird.
It's interesting, right? It makes you think.
Another one that comes to mind is Legend of Dragoon, which is an ancient RPG, where basically in the beginning, the first disc, you set out to save this girl named Shana, who has special powers. But then you save her, so that's not the point of the game.
Yeah.
Then the point of the games becomes saving the world. So and then you're together with Shana, and
but
this
that's lovely,
relationship grows a little bit.
That's lovely.
So there's that.
What about Final Fantasy VII? Am I mistaken in saying that Cloud and Aerith?
Yes.
Right? They formed a wonderful relationship, which was eventually dashed towards the end of the game.
They have not formed a relationship. Their relationship is misconstrued heavily throughout the years.
Again, there we go. Again, it's like...
The closest one, I would say, is Final Fantasy VIII, where Renoa and Squall... But it's very edgy. It's very, very teenager, so I wouldn't even count that one. Yeah. But that's maybe one you can count.
Okay,
man.
Let's take a step back, right?
Okay.
Let's exclude all games where you can have a relationship by choice. All right? So I'm saying take away Witcher, take away Mass Effect.
Dragon Age.
Take away Dragon Age. Because what I mean by that is, what game is there that focuses on a legitimate relationship without it being optional? That's what I'm getting at here. Now, if you do that, it becomes much, much smaller. So the most recent Don't Nod game.
Tell me why.
No, not Tell Me Why. The new one with the butterflies and stuff. I can't remember.
Oh, Life is Strange.
There we go. Life is Strange. True Colors. There we go. That's it. That one does. Okay, and it does it in a really wonderful way. But then again, at the same time, it's still choice-based, because you can choose to romance one of two people. So I don't know if we should even include that.
I haven't played that one yet. So.
It's good. It's good, Ed. True Colors is very good.
I have it installed on my PC. I just haven't played it.
Okay. So I know I said we would exclude choice, but the reason why I want to include it,
but that's part of the narrative,
is because it's part of the narrative. Like, you are forced to choose one of the two people, right? Well, actually, technically, no. You can actually stuff it up if you choose the wrong options and end up with no one. Anyway,
the bad ending.
so I gave it a lot of good thought, and there is one game that comes to mind, and it actually recently won quite a few awards at the recent The Game Awards, and It Takes Two. I don't know if you've played it or not.
I've installed it on the Xbox, but in thinking me and Marianne would play it, but we haven't.
A quick overview is...
It's a multiplayer game.
It's multiplayer, so you require two people to play, either co-op or online.
Okay.
And it has to do with this child whose parents are going through a divorce. But in order for the child to cope with it, something happens, and both parents become sort of like animated little puppets. And then two players have to play together to make it through every level, because every level consists of numerous puzzles. And what is beautiful about the game and the story is how you see the troubled relationship of the parents, why they don't want to be together. You know, they're at each other and they say the horrible things to each other. But then throughout the course of the game, they are reminded of why they got together in the first place. And it's a beautiful story of two people who wanted to separate, who eventually relearn why they loved each other in the first place, and they come together as one towards the end. It's not really a spoiler. It's quite obvious that that's what happens.
Yeah,
and then the child is no longer emotionally scarred about the situation. It's a good game. It also plays very well and looks very good, but specifically from a relationship perspective, which is what we're speaking about at the moment, I think that that's a very powerful message. How despite two people thinking they could never be together anymore, through the power of games, just through working together and being reminded of why they loved each other in the first place, they were able to put aside their differences and be as one again.
There is another that just occurred to me. Final Fantasy 15.
Oh.
The entire game is about getting to the wedding.
Oh, and in that's the end, so true.
And in the end, they wed, and I'm not going to spoil that ending because that's a mind-blowing ending. But in the end, they do wed, and it's a very... It's
okay. So
yeah, that's a good one.
But yes, okay, I suppose it is. Is there a focus on the relationship, though, or is it just a focus on getting him to the end?
If you skip all the run around in the open world stuff, yes, the story is about basically getting to the end and getting to this wedding, so the two countries will unite.
Oh, kind of like a Romeo and Juliet scenario, except they don't kill each other at the end.
Pretty much. But like what you just said now, also it reminds me of. Not True Colors, but Life is Strange 1, where you play as Max Caulfield. Anyway, as Max. And your relationship with your best friend, Chloe.
Yes.
That's also one where you do develop a relationship through until the title. End.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. But notice how few, and look how we have to actually think about this. Look at how we have to rack our brain to find a game, a meaningful game, yes, or a game that shows a meaningful relationship between characters that are not family, that is not familial in nature.
But look at that box behind you, Hans. What about Cortana and the Master Chief?
So I'm actually so glad you brought that up, because so the history of Halo is quite complex, okay? We know that John 117 is like basically a genetic, not a clone, but a genetically altered human, super soldier.
Yeah.
And as a result, he's made just for war and doesn't really know much, and comes from like the squalors of what is left of humanity, and becomes the savior of humanity in many respects. Even though he sounds like a 60-year-old, he's probably only like 32 or something.
Yeah.
So something like that. And personally speaking, I would say that his relationship with Cortana is actually beautiful, because it starts off through Halo 1, 2, 3 as she's your companion. But then within 1, 2, 3, she begins to have a personality. It slowly comes out and she starts making chips to Chief and so on and so forth. Then in Halo 4, it's a full-on narrative adventure between these two characters that are complete opposites, and yet the same. And the reason why I say that is because Dr. Halsey created the Super Soldier program, which the Spartan program, and she then also cloned her brain to create the Cortana AIs. So what's interesting is that again, it's like a weird familial thing, I suppose, in a way, whereby to an extent, it is very much a sibling relationship, even though it may not come across as that, because, Cortana does say she loves Chief, and Chief, I think, in a way, very much loves her. And the only reason why it's familial is because they're both from Halsey, but they're also both separate entities at the same time. So they're not related at all. So it doesn't make it weird or gross or anything like that. But now that in itself is a very interesting and strange relationship, because as beautiful as it is and as wonderful as it all comes together, Cortana is not real. She doesn't have a physical self. Mm-hmm. And John 117 himself is also like a creation of humanity.
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean, I wouldn't say it's the healthiest of relationships.
Okay.
Because in many respects, Cortana does assume a very much of a mother-like role to Chief.
Yeah.
She's there as support and to help versus being romantic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
So again, it's more of a familial relationship than it is a romantic, at least in my mind. Maybe I'm totally wrong and it is very much romantic.
Or at least friends. I don't know. Many websites I've seen would make that very romantic and passionate.
Well, I mean, we all know about that one website that does it for all the characters, okay? It's just, I can't really think of anything else right now. And so what I want to do is I'm going to pose the question to, or pose the topic to those of you who are listening. Are there any relationships that we've possibly missed? Because goodness knows there's thousands of games out there. Maybe it's some obscure little title that neither of us have played that does a great job of showcasing what it means to have a fulfilling, loving, happy relationship.
They call it The Sims.
You see, so again, that's very debatable, because you're in control of these relationships. It's not and to an extent, the relationships are core to the gameplay. But what I really mean is, where are the games like The Last of Us 2, which show this beautiful coming together of people to form into a relationship, and then they go on like this adventure together, but to the point where you genuinely care for the other characters.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really getting at, because a lot of the times the side characters that your main protagonist can form relationships with, they can be forgotten about. They're not necessarily as integral to the story or the plot as, the narrative of like The Last of Us 2, for example.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like. Like even the Heavy Rain, that was very familial based. It was all about Ethan trying to find his son.
His son, yeah. And the one love interest in there is just like, I don't know, there is a good ending to Heavy Rain where Ethan does end up with the love interest. I forgot her name.
I can't remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very much just there for the sex scene. Because it's a David Cage game.
Yes.
And that's what David Cage games are known for. So I wouldn't even count that.
I mean, is there anything else that you could possibly think of? Hey?
No. I will mention though, on the other end of the spectrum, you also get unreciprocated love. And stuff like thinking about Final Fantasy now made me think about Tifa and Cloud, which is very much an unreciprocated relationship, at least in the beginning. Obviously, the remake turns that on its head. But in the original game, the love Tifa has for Cloud is totally unreciprocated. And that made me think now, even that is something you don't see in video games.
Yeah.
So basically, it's weddings, proper relationship growth and unreciprocated love that has next to no.
I hear you. Yeah.
You don't see games about that, which is fascinating. It's a fascinating realization that you've brought this up as a topic.
Well, you see, this is why I wanted to, because I wanted to focus on how your relationship has evolved, and then it made me think. We've had a few really good discussions on gaming in general, and then I was like, well, what about relationships in games? Because I struggle to find or see really good ones. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was it. That's all I really...
I am doing a quick Google search.
Yeah.
And the strangest thing is, when I Google unreciprocated love in video games, I'm only getting results for unrequited love in video games. And it's all kinds of lists for video that should never have happened, unrequited love that were never meant to be.
Okay, yeah, but now are these real? Like a real unrequited love? Or is this fan-made? People shipping characters together again?
No, so because people are putting Link and Zelda and Princess Zelda and Link. You see,
the reason,
Mario and Peach.
Again, those are all great examples of why I think this is a topic that needs further discussion and elaboration. Because how are those relationships healthy? And I mean from the perspective of how long is Mario going to keep trying to get hold of Peach? Or or are Link and Zelda ever going to get together without some force always getting in the way? You know, and even if they do get together, is it a real relationship? Because my understanding from like Link and Zelda, for example, is that Zelda was a princess and Link is just a foot soldier.
It sounds like, yeah.
You know, and it's yes.
What's his name? Tidus and Yuna. The entire two Final Fantasy X games are about their love. So there's another one.
Okay, so there's one good one.
And that's a very good one. Yeah.
Okay, so we finally found a really good one.
Man, I can't believe it's this difficult. So please let us know.
Yeah, please let us know. Maybe we've really missed something. Maybe there's a beautiful, like I know there's an indie game Haven, which I haven't played yet. But my understanding is it is about couple. It is about a couple.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't know more about it than that, right? So, you know, it's possible we've missed something along the way. But, you know, predominantly I wanted this discussion to be around games in general and how there is a lack of romantic relationships, or rather healthy romantic relationships.
Not toxic relationships.
Not these things. Because really, if you think about it, a lot of these relationships that are not good. You know, of these people having to like, I mean, like honestly, at this point in time, Bowser has more of a relationship with Peach than Mario does. Okay,
exactly.
That's all I want to say about that. Okay, as an example.
If this were an HBO show,
look. At the same time, So that's really it. Now, I want to say one last thing, and I want to say that it's quite interesting to me that gaming hasn't really broached this topic properly, because generally video games are always at the ahead of the curve. You know, they're more inclusive than other games. You know, they are more representative of the populations that play. And yet I find that there seems to be a distinct lack of what it means to have a good romantic relationship within, or at least portrayed within video games versus like take cinema, for example. Movies are constantly about relationships. Yeah. So, you know, perhaps maybe the issue here then is how many games don't have real narratives. You know, they're more about the game and the gameplay than they are about whatever relationships are going on. You know, like Jurassic World Evolution 2, which I'm playing at the moment, that doesn't need relationship building, as an example. You know, so it doesn't matter if Ian Malcolm is not getting with the new woman that is in charge of whatever's going on. You know, because I don't know, it's new characters. That's the only reason why I'm not sure. Otherwise, I would have said Ellie Sadler, you know, from the original film. But anyway, we won't go there because that's not the point of this discussion. Because that again is now cinema. You see,
tune in for next time. Relationships in movies.
Please let us know.
Do.
Let us know what you thought about this episode as well. And as always, if you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, please, at your own leisure. And Ed, I think we have one more episode left for the year, and then we'll see you all again in 2022. But until then, thank you for listening. We hope you had a wonderful time, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Bye.